loving the camera in my computer, and I'm loving these post-edit moments. Yeah, the video is an hour long. And the reason it's an hour long is I screw up a couple times. I screw up a bunch of times, and I explain why I screwed up. If you care, you can watch the first 5 minutes and then fast forward all the way to the end, and you can see what the result is. I get the lights installed, and they're pretty goddamn bright. Enjoy the adventure.
Hey kids, welcome back to Uncle Fezzi's Body Shop of Bad Decisions, and also known as the Quartermaster Upgrade Center. We'll see how this goes. So, the Quartermaster and the Grenadier both come with these load-bearing, actually, believe it or not, bars on the roof. The other thing it comes with is that whole cool light, or whole cool switch panel above the driver area. What's that for? Well, it's for auxiliary doodads, for the sake of argument. And it also comes pre-wired for them. And we're going to take this out because this is going to become part of the story here in a second. So it's pre-wired for lights. Now, when I built my Dakota, I installed these relatively inexpensive LED floodlights as backup lights. I ordered 2 sets because, you know, why not? Because I was going to use them for something else, and I never used them. So these things are brand new, and I never used them. So why not put them on the Grenadier here, or on the Quartermaster, on these bars that are screaming to have lights put on them. I'll probably never use them, but you never know when you need a little extra light. So here's the light, and that's where I want to mount it. Now, I can buy mounts for these lights. They are $120 a pair. Now they are made out of, you know, fancy CNC machined aluminum but you know, I'm cheap and I have a 3D printer. So let's go see what I'm up to. What I should be doing is putting the snowblower away, but I know as soon as I put that snowblower away, we're gonna get a freak April snowstorm of like 20 inches. This happens here in Philly. Okay, so I'm gonna skip a lot of this just because I can. But these are the lights. They're actually shockingly bright, and they're actually probably too bright for what I want to use them for. Well, what did I do? Well, I got out my handy dandy calipers here, and I started making prototypes for the mounts. I plan on printing these out of ASA. Actually, I already printed them out of ASA, and that's going to be part of this project too. So I but these are PLA. These are just practice. Now, I just happen to have a whole bunch of these bolts laying around from a furniture project. These are black phosphate. I should probably use stainless, but I have these. If they rust, I can always swap them out. But after several different iterations, I eventually came to this one. Now you'll see here I have multiple different test prints here. When you're 3D printing, or when you're making anything, reverse engineering, what have you, it's always in your best interest to print up like a little section. These were originally for checking to make sure that they would clear. And well, they didn't the first 4 tries, or 3 tries. The mount itself is actually asymmetrical. Okay, so this is the final iteration of the mount. Now, how's this going to work? The way it's going to work is this is getting mounted to the truck this way. Okay. That. And then the light's going to go in the middle. Actually, this is the truck side, so like that. And then the light will get mounted thusly. And then I plan on leaving these somewhat loose so I can adjust them. These have a pretty wide spread, but I want to be able to adjust them if I need to, so they can be adjustable that way. So the interesting, not so much interesting part of this project is I had to figure out, I can't get a wrench underneath it here or a socket. I might be able to nut and bolt them together, but interestingly enough, I actually have these inserts. These are nut certs. Not only are they nut certs, but they're actually specifically designed to thread in, and they thread in fantastically to plastic if you do it right. So in fusion, when you extrude a hole, this is my practice hole. When you extrude a hole, you can adjust the angle of the hole. Now these are tapered. So they're tapered, and they have, oh, it's a fancy word. It's like trobolone or baloney. They have, these are special. They're made specifically for plastic. You can use them for wood too. I originally used them for wood. They didn't work great, so I just kind of put them in, I threw them aside in the hoard. Then I realized, oh, I have these things, right? They thread in. Now this is a test piece that I made to make sure that it was going to work. And damn if they don't. Now I've already screwed this together. So what you end up having here is a beautiful thread cert into the plastic with a lip around the outside. The other thing I thought about using with these and actually embedding them in the print, I decided against that for a lot of reasons. Mainly because it was just a pain in the ass to stop the print. And I'm lazy, remember? So these are held together with this. With these are quarter 20s, because you know my car gets 4 rods to the hogshead, and that's the way I like it. So the way they go in. No, I did that already. So that's it. So what was one of the other screw ups? Because everything I do is a screw up. I should mention that these are the finished ones. I actually printed out. There's a PLA. So these are the finished ones, printed in ASA. Now, they didn't print really perfect. What I should start doing is use the fuzzy skin. And this is one that's screwed up. I actually printed, but these came out pretty nice. I printed them in this orientation on the build plate because I didn't want the holes to get screwed up. But what it did was, that's where the support material was. That's not bad, because this gives the plastic something to grip to. That aluminum bar is it's kind of slick. So what's that? Yeah, I printed out one extra because you know, I'm a dimwit, and the chances of me screwing one of them up are pretty good. So I needed 8. And I needed 4, and I printed 5. There's only 3 there. That's one that's printed sideways. One's printed sideways. One's printed sideways. Why don't I have the other ones? I should have 2 more. Yeah, imagine that. I'm a reach and print enough. It's actually being offensive to people that are mentally disabled. I'm a dumbass. And I absolutely didn't print enough of these. I got confused. Shocking, I know, right? So these are actually printed out of ASA. This was an 8-hour print to do these, because they're pretty much solid ASA. They did warp on the plate, which I was expecting. So there's a pretty decent warpage on a couple of them. Not all of them, but some of them did warp. But that doesn't matter, because they need a space in them anyway. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to reprint them after I'm done futzing with my phone project. No, it happens. I can't believe I did that. No, I can, actually. I was rushing. Everything gets screwed up when I rush. So here's another funny thing. You noticed that it was plugged in, right? or the lights plug in. And, well, they're Deutsche connectors. These are German plugs. Deutsche? German, right? German plugs. I had 50-50 shot at getting it right when I ordered them from Amazon because I didn't actually research what plugs they were. I've got into metric packs plugs before, and I actually have a tool to put those together. I saw these, and I said, well, you know, that's really cool. I want these. Well, the problem is, these are 14 to 18 gauge, and the plug for the Grenadier is 12 to 14 gauge, so it's actually a heavier plug. It's a bigger plug, and outwardly you can't really tell that it's different. I mean, well, you can tell it's different, but I wasn't thinking, so I ordered the wrong plug. The right one will be here shortly. Not today, because I took Amazon deal day, $1.50. I can apply it to my Paramount Plus. So I ordered the wrong plugs. Now, these aren't junk. There's a couple other places I'm planning on using these. So they get thrown in the hoard, of course. Why would I have the right shit? Or why would I order the right shit? I'm not exactly sure how well this is going to work out. I'm not buying a new fucking camera. I bought a new car. So let's take a second to talk about Deutsche connectors and what I did, because it was pretty stupid. Okay, so my light project, I already did one. There we go. I installed the Deutsche connector, and I'm going to show how to do that and what mistakes I made in the process, because I like showing everything I screwed up. So let's, I'm going to move the camera in a little bit and talk about it. So the INEOS Grenadier comes pre-wired. I showed that earlier in the video. And it's really nice. These plugs are already in the holes where I plug them in. I showed that. Me being Veruca, I needed or wanted to get the parts that I wanted ahead of time, right? So, well, I screwed up and I ordered the wrong ones. So there was two options, and of course I chose the wrong option. So this is the one that I ordered. Now this is a 12 to 14 gauge, I think. It doesn't say. 2-pin Deutsche connectors. I had a 50-50 shot, and of course I ordered the wrong ones. So these are the ones I got the first time, and these are the ones that I got, or this is the one that's on the truck. Well, they don't fit, okay? Yeah, they don't fit. This is actually the male. This is the female. This is the one that would go in the truck. And I don't have the other one here. But, oh, I do, actually. So I ordered the wrong ones. Now, I'm not going to toss these away or send them back to Amazon because I'll use them. They're really, really handy. And these came pre-assembled with pigtails on them, which is cool. I'm going to put these away because these are a sign of my failure. So I ordered the correct ones, kind of. You know, goddamn Chinese strike again. Real Deutsche connectors require a special crimper to use. Well, I ordered the special crimper because why not, right? It's a tool, and I like tools. I don't need this because the Chinese strike again. This is the correct plug. This is the correct plug. This is the correct one. Again, these are Chinese. And these are the males. I'm going to show them real quick. This is the male plug. Two of these anyway. These are the female plugs. Now I'm a dimwit because I am always a dimwit. So if you look real carefully, these are not correct. They're correct, but they're not. These are not designed to be used with this tool.
So the way this tool works, and this is pretty cool, I didn't know this. You stick the connector in, and then you just crimp it, right? Well, these plugs are to be used with this kind of crimper. There's many different styles. This is the one that I prefer, because it takes 12 gauge wire. So the other thing is that the truck is wired with 12 gauge wire and not 14 gauge. That's why the plugs are different size. And this is the correct one. This is the correct one. Now these things are super easy to use. Metra packs, which I also have, are a pain in the ass to use. They're weather packs. I have weather pack switches too. The Deutsche connectors are actually a much better design than the weather pack or the Metra pack, because they don't require a special tool. The Deutsche connectors require a special tool, but they're easier to assemble than the Metra pack. I'm not going to drag the Metra packs out. They're used on General Motors cars generally. I bought them years ago for a different project, and well, here we are. So these are pretty simple to do. I don't not trust them. I generally don't trust anything that the Chinese sell. I should have bought the worth ones. I should have spent the extra money and bought the expensive ones, but I didn't know that at the time when I was buying them. So you trim back the wire a little bit. This wire is 12 gauge, which is what's actually in the truck, because the plugs in the truck are wired for, it's a 25 amp fuse, which is pretty decent size. It's actually a 25 amp breaker, which is a pretty decent size, breaker. Now when I did the first one, because I'm a dimwit, I saved it. I always ruin the first one. I shoved the wire all the way in, not thinking when I did it. So, and this one actually is crimped with the tool. That's when I realized I made a mistake. Yeah, well, actually I realized I made a mistake when I went to plug it in. So these are super duper simple. They're just like pretty much any other plug or any other wiring harness that you can build. So I'm actually going to trim that back a little tiny bit more. So when you stick it in, there's a little lip here. It's kind of vital that you get these right. Shocking, I know, right? And they're a little bit finicky. I don't like this style of crimper. Remember, I did this for a living, so I've built a ton of these over the years. So these require a little bit more finesse to get them to work right. Now this crimper has two different crimping flicky things. So I like to start it this way, and then I'll flip it around and push it in this way. Again, it's not a great setup. I should probably solder these connections, but yeah, it's kind of low load, and so that's the crimp for the actual wire. And then this one here crimps the insulation. So this one holds the insulation, the other one holds the wire. The pointy one holds the insulation. So this is actually the way that the Metra packs go together, or the weather packs go together. And those will drive you blind trying to put those together, because those wires are way smaller. So there's your crimp connection. Again, I'm not super crazy about it. It's a low load light, so I'm not really worried about it. So that's that. I'm going to do another one real quick. I also had to go to Napa and buy 12 gauge wire because I don't have any. I generally don't use 12 gauge for anything anymore, especially with LED lighting. It's not LED lighting, even the high load ones, the really super bright ones, are not that much of a draw. It's not like an old incandescent bulb with, or halogen, or it's not drawing that much amperage. But INEOS over-engineered it because it's German. Well, it's British, but you get the idea. Designed by Germans. And Germans over-engineer everything. That's what cost them the war. So you want to be careful. Let me take a little bit more off of that. I'm not super crazy about these wire strippers, but these are the ones I've used forever, so I have a couple different styles. Another thing you got to be careful with, especially when you're using a short piece of wire, is pulling the wires crooked. So I'm going to turn that off again. A smart person would probably tin these wires. This isn't a boat or an airplane, so I'm not, you know, it's a bullshit light that I'm hanging on the side of my truck that's, you know, I paid $30 for both of them. These aren't, you know, $300 hoopty fancy super duper off-road lights, which I'm still trying to wrap my head around why they cost so much money for the off-road ones from an off-road company. You know, if I was going through the Outback or was doing this on a regular basis, I would absolutely buy the better ones, but this is more for show than anything else. Okay, so that's good and crimped. That's actually a nice one. I watch a guy on YouTube, his name's Zach Friedman, Voidstar Labs. He is plugging another YouTube type site for people that are really interested in watching exactly how a process is done, because YouTube doesn't like videos that are more than 12 minutes long or 15 minutes long. Okay, there we go. That shows an entire process. It shows everything that's happening, which is what I'm doing right now. So now we got that. This is, I could reuse this one. I'm going to stick this one in there. So in reality, I didn't need this kit. All I needed were these ends, because this is the factory plug, and it came with these little plugs in it, which I can't even get out. So it came with these plugs, but what it should have done was come with the connector with these plugs in it, and it didn't, which is, I'm assuming that's just because it's an oversight. What they should do is, when you get your truck, they should come with these, the correct ones, not this style, but the real ones, the right ones. You know, in the glove box or whatever. Maybe it did. Maybe they're hidden in the car somewhere. I can't find them. But you know, it's neither here nor there. So I actually marked this. This is the one that I had already. This one's already built. And the other question is, why is this pigtail so long, and why isn't this wrapped in heat shrink? I'll show you in a minute. Yeah, it's not necessary. So this is the plug. Make sure you do it right, because I am famous for doing this stuff wrong. I've put together so many of these over the years, and eventually I'll do one backwards. So the Deutsche plugs, you just push in till it clicks, and you're good to go. And obviously you want to make sure your positive and your negative is correct. It shouldn't matter, but in a regular car or a 12-volt system, it really wouldn't matter. Ground is whatever, but because everything goes through an ECU now, you really kind of want to make sure your positive is your positive and your negative is your negative. under normal circumstances, I would leave these staggered. I actually accidentally did that because I'm so used to having one longer than the other. So when I put it together, you don't have this big blob of lumpy here. I didn't do that because I'm kind of limited. I need every inch of this to get these to mount where I want them and only have this piece exposed. So I'm going to trim these straight. These are nice because you can twist the wires, and you'll see why in a second. I don't like doing this, but kind of a little bit jammed up that way because of I need this. Now I could have bought dual conductor and then just did it that way. I could have, by the hair of my chinny chin, actually could have just used this and ran it into this. But this pigtail would have been just a little bit too short for what my intended plan is, so I added a little bit of wire to them. Oh, I need that. Now, again, these are cheap Chinese Amazon lights. It is what it is. I'm not going to lose a whole lot of. I'm not going to lose a whole lot of sleep over them. So this is what it comes wired. And almost all these come with this 18 gauge wire. Some of them are even finer, 20 gauge for LEDs. LED wire or LEDs really draw so little power that you don't need giant wires. I don't know what the engineers were thinking when they ran 12 gauge wires, other than they wanted to make sure that the car side didn't get fried. That's my assumption. Okay, so we don't need any more of this. Oh, and there's nothing more fun than knocking one of these and a whole box of these onto the floor and then having to go pick them up. So we're actually done with these. For the time being, I have a feeling I'm going to need these at another. I'm going to need these again. Now, of course, okay. Black to black, red to red, white to white. Remember, kids, to put your crimp connector on before you twist your wires. All right. Now, I've heard multiple different bad things, or I've heard multiple different opinions of this type of connector. And, you know, quite frankly, I'm going with everybody on the internet is full of shit. These solder connectors, I did have one fail on my truck. As a matter of fact, that's how I got this. That's how I ended up with this extra set. So you saw what I did there. I twisted the wire around there. We've got plenty of connection. Now, I've bought a couple different styles of these low temp solder. I bought a couple different types of this low temp solder, heat shrink, do flicky, for the sake of argument. And you notice I have this pretty level. That's because when the solder starts to flow, it will follow the path of least resistance, and generally the path of least resistance is downhill. These things are really nice because you can tell, you can watch the adhesive inside the heat shrink ooze out. I am using a cordless soldering iron, not a torch. I've got a crack torch right here. I've got my torch right here. I'm not using that because I don't want to use open flame with these things. I've had less than stellar success. So I'm working from one end to the other and get it good and hot. Bang, there it went. And then I give it just a little bit. I want to see the solder flow into the joint, which it'll do. Just takes a second. These are for people that aren't in a rush. I'm definitely going to say that. Another thing you have to... there it's doing it. Son of a bitch. I wish I could show it on video. It did exactly what I didn't want it to do. That's okay. Yep. It squished the solder out. I got it too hot. But I'm not going to redo the joint. I don't need to redo the joint. What I need to do is get rid of that. So this is the negative side. If this was the positive side, I'd get really concerned about it, but I'm gonna set that thing aside so I don't start a fire. I have a stand for this thing somewhere. There we go, perfect. I got rid of that. Well, that we can live with that. It did smush some of the solder out, but there's still the solder's still making the connection, and that's all that matters. I mean, it's connected, it's heat shrunk. A lot of people don't even use solder with these or they just twist the wires together and put heat shrink over them. I don't do that. I like these connectors. I have a whole pack of them, whole kit of them. The blue ones, I split the difference because the wire size is so different. This actually should get, like, I think a yellow one, but the blue ones are working fine. That's like that. I'm sure there's a aerospace engineer somewhere that's freaking out because I'm doing it this way. No, it's not a fucking helicopter. It's not a spaceship. It's a cheap light that I'm putting on my truck. But that did exactly what I did. It did exactly what I didn't want it to do. Shocking. Again, I don't want that to do that again, so I'm being a little bit more careful this time. The other thing with these is once the solder starts to flow, you want to back off a little bit, just like that, because it's flowing. So as soon as the solder starts to flow, I should have backed off the other one, and I didn't. Because the plastic stays warm for a while, and heat travels. You got to be careful with this wireless or cordless soldering heat gun. Oops, because it will cook stuff. Regular heat gun will too. You can watch. I like these because you can watch the glue flow onto the wire. And it gets nice and shiny. Now these do go opaque after a couple seconds. I read a comment on these things. This guy was complaining that they melt at, like, I forget what it is,
like 400 or 500 degrees Fahrenheit. If it might even be hotter than that. I'm not exactly sure. And one of the other commenters basically said, if you have a joint that's getting 500 degrees, you have a bigger problem. Your problem is bigger. You know, if this thing gets to be hot enough to melt this solder, then you should have put a better fuse in. And I agree. Okay, so now I actually don't want these touching, so I'm going to do 2 wraps here. Now, the other thing is, why didn't I use heat shrink over these? I didn't use heat shrink over them because, again, in the past, I've had to take these apart before, and they're not fun to take apart. And why add even more aggravation? There's nothing wrong with using some electrical tape. They call it finishing tape. There's nothing wrong with using There's nothing wrong with using a little bit of tape to cover up the joint. It's when you get into a factory wiring harness, the whole damn thing's taped up. Now, I didn't just twist these wires together and put electrical tape on them. That would be a little ghetto. But okay. There's nothing wrong with using tape. I was of the school of thought that, you gotta use heat shrink. Blah, blah, blah. Not for nothing. If the factory's using electrical tape, if the factory's using tape, I can use tape. I buy good tape. I don't buy cheap tape. I have cheap tape. I use that for taping up wounds. I also don't want to run it all the way down. That's the other reason I bought decent wire. These are sealed. That's a seal. So no water's going to get into it. And this doesn't need to be a 100% without fail watertight connection. These are on the roof of my truck. If I'm that deep in water, first of all, I'm not worried about these lights. Okay, that's it. Oh, no, it's not it. You have to take this wedge. I'm just looking in there. I was like, that's kind of weird looking. You take that wedge, you stick it in there. Now, I do have a little bit of a... That one's a little crooked. That's what the wedge is for. I have a pick for this. I got a tool for this. So what's going on here is the wedge isn't quite lining up. It's because the Chinese connectors are... Well, there we go. All I had to do was twist the wire a little bit. And then I'm just going to take these, push that in. We're now connected. That's that. Now, the next thing I'm going to do... Okay, so I'm back again here. All right. I was going to cut it out, but I'm probably going to leave it in because it's going to be a long video, of course, always, right? So, I had discussed earlier in the video, I discussed these nut certs. These are made specifically for plastic. I talk about that. So when I designed these, I made it so these would fit. Again, my holes in me just don't seem to get along. So what I have to do is, and this isn't the end of the world, because when I printed these, the wall thickness on these is incredibly thick. There's like, I think like 10 layers. I should cut one of these in half and show you how thick the walls are. Actually, you can kind of see it. I don't know if it'll show up on camera, but you can kind of see from the top surface here how thick these walls actually are. And that's where the strength comes from. Infill, these are actually 75% infill. These are almost completely solid ASA plastic. And ASA shrinks. So the holes were spec'd out properly for these, and it worked fine for my test hole. But these, apparently they didn't want to work right. Now, well, the answer is I have a reamer. And the reamer is about the same taper as these. So these are about a 5-degree taper from the front to the top, or from the bottom to the top. This is the bottom piece, so this is the way it goes together. And they are asymmetrical, right? So this batch actually, so I ran a whole nother batch, and this batch came out a lot nicer than the first batch. There's a lot less shrinkage, Jerry, shrinkage, and warping with this set. So this one was bad too. So this one was bad. This one's warped really bad, and I had a bad layer here. Several bad layers. So this one's actually going into the garbage. If I put a straight edge across that, you can see that, actually you might even be able to see here, this one warped, which created this. This one's junk. Whenever I 3D print anything like this, I always print many extras. It's my reamer. You notice the end's cut off because I used to use this reamer for doing door hinges, but it's going to work perfectly for these. So you just need to give it, this particular set, I just need to give it a little bit. I don't want to say you can't go too much, because you can, but I just want to clean the hole out just a tiny bit. Again, this is not an airplane. And this is really just to get the hole to start. I'm going to do part of this on the bench, but I really need to finish them in the vise. So the way these work is they have a little, I think it's not 1/4 inch. I think it's 5 millimeter, it could be 1/4 inch. They have about a 1/4 inch hole. These are actually metric, I think, but the threads are standard. They're 1/4-20 threads. So basically, you just stick it in the hole, and give it a twist. And they'll thread right in. I'm not going to do this. I don't want to ruin these, so we put them in the vise and hold them in the vise just to hold them. You don't want to crank it. Remember, it's plastic. And then I put some pretty decent down pressure on this. If you don't have one of these, now this is a snap-on, but they're made by many knockoffs. This is a fantastic screwdriver for this type of stuff. So I'll be right back. Now these are installed. I ran over to. It's just so much easier to put these in a vise. You can really push down on them, and you can really crank on them. I only ever put these in by hand because the you can actually crack the insert if you really crank on it. You can crack the insert. How do I know that? Well, because I've done it. So here's the mount. So this is the bottom of the mount. This is the top. Again, they're asymmetrical. I also ground this washer. These are stainless washers. I ground and deburred this washer because the mount from the factory has these slots in it. It's slotted so you can adjust it a little bit. So that washer goes in there square, or it's kind of encapsulated. Fold in. Now I'm putting these together to make sure all the holes line up. And make sure everything threads together, because I don't want to be out there at the truck futzing. I'm tired of futzing with things.
I also need to press this washer in. So this washer is also stainless, and the holes are spec'd to be like a thou over, maybe 2 thou. Well, it shrunk. It was to be expected. Of course, I got a problem with holes. It's just the way it is. Now, I don't need to crank these together, but I do want to put them together to make sure everything is hunky-dory. Yeah, it's funny. This screwdriver is an ADT. I got it from, I got it with a kit with these nipples. This damn thing comes in really handy. It's not as nice as my Snap-on, but it's pretty nice. I like it. I use it all the time. Doesn't always have to be Snap-on to work great. Okay. So now you can see here from the bottom that this one comes all the way through. The thread comes all the way through the bottom. This one doesn't. I'm okay with that. That's actually fully engaged in the threads of the part of the insert. There's full engagement with all the threads in the insert, because the insert itself goes in probably 1/4 of an inch. So we're well within acceptable amount for thread engagement. So that's one. Now let's put the other one together here real quick. And they go right in. There's no cracking, there's no nothing. It just goes right together. Actually, this is a great example of warpage. There's my warpage. That's why I'm doing these on the bench. I kind of want to get them to... there are lefts and rights, by the way. Because because this is asymmetrical, they are left and rights. And the first one doesn't matter how you put it together, but the second one you want to make sure you put it together right. If I didn't grind the washer off, the washer was bellying. So that's kind of what I wanted to do there. The only thing that irritates me about this project, and this is just petty on my part, is that these quarter 20 Allens are a different size than the metric ones. So there's 2 different types and sizes of thread or materials. You know, this is the United States. Again, my car gets 4 rods to the hogshead, and that's the way I like it. It's also what I happen to have on hand. So there we go. Now I'm going to do the light. So the light requires its own hardware, because it may have came with hardware, but of course, you know, I lost it. The light's metric, of course, because it's made in China. China. It's the short ones. Yes. So these are 5mm. Everything else in the truck is 4mm. These are 5. Well, I shouldn't say that. The ones I've come across on the truck are 5mm. And these are cast. So this is another one where I want to run the tool in to make sure, or run the part together to make sure that the usually come with an orange. It may have been in here. Maybe in there somewhere. Probably at the bottom. Oh well. We have the technology. It's not that size. Oh, damn if it isn't. Well, that's a standard metric then. This screw, I think, is too long.
So another thing with these is I don't want them super duper tight. I want to have a little room to be able to move them. Yeah, this is too long. I'm one bump away from dropping that whole container full of nuts and bolts on the floor. How do I know this? I've done it. Ah, perfect. Okay, so these are 12 millimeters. Yeah, they're 12 millimeters. Half inch. They're half inch. This set from, I know I like to bitch about Amazon and China, but I'm going to admit that this set I got from Amazon's actually pretty decent. I have no real complaints with it other than the hardware does rust, so I'm going to keep that in mind. I used the other style. These are buttons. And then I have the other ones. The other ones rusted outside on the project. So what I might do when I'm all done with this is just take a little drop of clear, a little drop of lacquer clear, and stick it on them. There's nothing worse than Chinese hardware. It really isn't. It is just a really bad. The Chinese are definitely plotting against us when it comes to hardware. They have perfected shitty hardware. Now, let's put the whole thing together. Now, if I wanted to be really fancy with this, I could make new like thumb hardware, and make a washer that goes in here that engages in these. Because this is just like I don't know, it's just like pressed in. Again, this is something I do want to be able to adjust. And I want to be able to adjust it instantly. So like if I need them, if I'm using them, and let's say I need to shine them further away from the truck, I want to be able to do that. For whatever reason, who knows? This is purely a purely looks cool lark. The chances of me ever actually using these lights are probably close to 0%. Alright, so that's it. There's the light mount. And then I'm going to go put them on the truck. I'm going to save you that. Because, well, actually I might not. Let's make this video 3 hours fucking long in 15 parts. Okay. Sadly, I didn't get this on camera. I broke one. Now, why did it break? Well, the short answer is Archimedes is a smart-ass motherfucker. The other is my design is poor. And I'm going to show exactly why and how it failed. I'm not blaming the material. What I'm blaming is Magilla Gorilla tightening them up, tightening the part up. So the failure point is right here. Hopefully this is going to show up on camera. I got my handy dandy pointing device here. So the failure point is here. Okay, so this is I didn't think about it when I was designing these. This is why you prototype things. I actually did mount these on the truck, and I didn't really think about it. So actually it's much better to show on the yellow one. So the failure point here is this joint. It's not even a joint. It's this here. What I should have done is I should have moved, instead of making this so tight, because I didn't want it to move around a whole lot, right? So here, for that, what I should have done was I should have moved this back another like 10th thou, or another 10th to about there, and put a fillet in. This should be filleted. If this was a fillet, that wouldn't have broke, because it snapped when I tightened. And now granted too, I really was cranking down on this thing when it snapped. So there's about, I know how much there's a 5 thou gap in between these two, right? So when it goes on, it should actually have a space in between the two of them. And I underestimated the stiffness of this material, believe it or not. And what it did was, because of this sharp edge, when I tightened it down, it just snapped at it at the weakest point, and that is a weak point for any material. Actually, if this was steel or aluminum, that's where it would have bent and broke, because of the arc of the part here. Now, inside of here, you can see there's a considerable amount of roughness. Now, that's from the support material, and I actually wanted that in there, believe it or not, to act as like a grippy, because you don't need to crank them all the way down. They don't need to be tightened up like they're head bolts. The other thing is, it's really cold out today. Now, these parts weren't cold, and plastic creeps. So what I should have done was put them on exactly the way I did, let them sit, and then after a couple weeks or so out in the sun baking, tighten them up again. And then that too could have caused a failure point over time. We'll see. It wasn't the end of the world. It's not the end of the world. If it breaks, it breaks, which means it's back to the drawing board. I'm not going to reprint these right now because, well, 2 reasons. One is I don't have enough ASA to do 8 more of these. The other is, if I do this again, I'm going to use what's called TPU for AMS to do it with. The TPU for AMS is a much more flexible product, and I think in this particular instance it might be a better product to use for this particular application. My only question is, and I have to research it, which I will do after I'm done with this project, is what the UV resistance of TPU for AMS is. I don't know what it is. Ultraviolet rays don't impact ASA, and that's why I used it. The other thing that I could have done wrong here, I don't think I did, but there's a distinct possibility that when I did the slice, I should have looked a little bit closer at where the actual thickness of the material was. I think there is an inconsistency in the material thickness. So it's considering this as the top layer when actually both layers are the top layer. I'm going to go back in and look at the slice, because I have a feeling that could have been part of it too. The light's mounted, and the light's mounted and it looks great. I'm pretty happy with it. Oops. Okay, interesting thing is this is actually asymmetrical. On the other side, this box is forward. On this side, the box is to the rear. It doesn't matter. So I'm just going to take this apart. Maybe we'll catch me snapping another one of these. Because, boy, wouldn't that be funny? And the other thing I did on the other side, which was a mistake, was I didn't thread the wire through first. Because the bracket, the mount, is too close to... I could butt it right up against this piece, which I don't really want to do. I kind of want a little bit of space here, because these are tapered, because they're popped out of a mold, so they have a draft to them. These do not. So... Sorry, this is the best camera angle I can get. Probably drop the screw because, you know, why wouldn't I drop the screw? Asymmetrical for a reason. Those are measured. What I did with the screws. As per normal, I lost the screw. I lost the screw within seconds. Now, because I learned my lesson the last time, I hope, I'm not going to crank these down like they're head bolts. Wow, I'd love to know what the hell I did with that screw. Alright. Now, when the other one broke, I was using a considerable amount of force. The other thing is, I want to equalize this a little so the gap is even. And that'll keep it from breaking too, I hope. And that was the one I was tightening when it snapped. Still a little loose. I shouldn't be that concerned with them. It's kind of a design fault, but I'm working around it. Give that a little bit of a twist to get it to come out enough. Put these in. It's cold out here today. I really like to know where the hell that screw went. I'll find it in my tire. I'm tightening them up, but I'm not cranking them down super duper tight. So there it is, mounted on. They can still move a little, but they're not going. The screw, the movement is here in this screw, and I kind of left them loose like that for a reason, so I could do that, so I could actually reach up and adjust them. Let's turn them on. So the way these work is these switches here. So these switches are all off right now. So this is the main power switch, and that's the exterior. So I'll come out at night and show how they shine. They shine really nice. Now obviously it's daytime, so you can't see them, but they're there. And they have lefts and rights. Oh, there you go. So we shall see how that works out. I am slightly nervous about the piece breaking, but we'll find out. You know, worst case scenario is it's a little plastic piece that broke off my truck. You know, they're wired in. It's not like they're going to fly down the highway and waffle into the windshield of somebody's car, but knowing my luck, it might. Hey, I lost a pair of Crocs that way. All right, here we go. Okay, I have to use my phone because the GoPro doesn't like the dark. I don't like the dark either. So, here we go here. Let's turn the switch on. And then there's scene lights. Well, I hate to say it, but it works. Over here,
And it doesn't really show up very well on video, but the reality of it is they're pretty bright. Let's see if we can adjust this one. I don't really want to. Yeah, it shines it out a little further. Now we're in the backyard, so there's only about 20, maybe 20 feet, maybe 20 feet from here to there, and it's pretty well lit up. And then over here, about the same amount. Well, there you go. So, we'll see how it goes. I'm pretty happy with it, except for the fact that I now have this light shining in my eyes. But, you know, it's pretty bright, and I'm filming under it. So, there you go. You got to use my light outlets on my car. Thanks for watching, and we'll do the winch video next, which isn't going to be a great video, I promise.